Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. So today I wanted to answer a question that I was sent on Facebook. I really like doing this because I get a lot of the same questions, especially for people who are looking for stuff on personal training and want kind of like general questions like that answered. So if you guys ever have any questions, feel free to ask me either here or any of my social medias. Okay, so the question is, hey Danny, I have a quick question about lifting since you are a personal trainer. I know the proper exercises to do, but my whole life I have lifted a full body because I only went a few times a week. My question is, how do you separate each body part into days, and is there a proper / perfect combination of body parts to focus on together? For example, do legs go with back on a day, etc.? Lastly, if you choose you want to focus on back one day, would you include all areas such as lats, lower, middle, and traps for that back day? Thanks, girl. Thank you. And the answer to that question is really a little bit more complicated than just yes or no, and I'll explain why. First of all, the first question about training a specific body part versus training all of your body parts together, or all of your body, like doing a full body workout, that is kind of very specific to what your goals are. If you are training for aesthetic purposes, like you're training for a bodybuilding show, you're training for some kind of fitness competition, then I 100% recommend breaking down your body parts into separate days, just because really when you're training for aesthetics, you're not really training to be strong, you're training for aesthetics, you're training for how you look. So you're gonna start having some things that you're going to have to work on, like if your triceps aren't like popping that well, you're gonna have to work on your triceps. If your shoulders aren't nice and capped like some bigger competitors want, then you're gonna have to work on your shoulders, your hamstrings and glutes for bikini, things like that. You're gonna start having to do more isolation exercises the more you get into aesthetics, because basically you're lifting to look good, and you're always going to have, everyone is going to have certain muscle weaknesses. They're going to have certain places that they're weaker in that they need to work on. Now, I personally do not break my body parts down into different days. I do very, very few isolation exercises. If you guys look at any of the lifts that I've done in my episodes, my like vlog episodes, then you see that I rarely, if ever, do any isolation exercises. If I'm doing any kind of isolation exercises, it's usually for specifically my lats or my hamstrings, just because those are the two weaker areas that I have in my body. But that's all for functionality for gymnastics. Like, I'm basically trying to make my body as functional as possible so I can do gymnastics. If you are in sports and you are like a gymnast who's watching this, or you are in any other sport who's watching this, and you are looking to add in lifting or some type of exercise and conditioning regimen to your training, I 100% recommend you do stuff that is functional to the sport that you're doing. So everything you're doing is getting you stronger at the things that you need for your sport. So for example, like I'm not gonna do bicep curls until I die, because your biceps, I never really use my biceps in gymnastics. I never really use it at all, in fact. And so I'm never going to sit there and do curls on curls on curls, because there's no point for me to do that. But if I'm training for like a bodybuilding show, like a bikini competition or a figure competition, and I need my arms to look a certain way, then yeah, I might actually end up doing that. So getting into that, the second part of her question is basically, how would I break down the muscle groups if I was training for aesthetics, basically. And how I used to do it in the past before I got back into gymnastics was I divided it up how your bodies naturally function. So I would divide up chest and tri into one day, back and biceps into one day. I'd put legs on a separate day, and then I'd do shoulders and abs on a separate day from that. And I'd usually do legs about twice a week. And then I'd just cycle through that for about 6 to 8 weeks, and then I would switch it. So I did chest and back one day, bis and tris one day, legs are still separate, and then shoulders shoulders and abs are still separate. And I do that for 6 to 8 weeks. And then finally, I would do chest, tricep, shoulders, back and biceps, legs, and then abs are just whenever I felt like doing them. And I would cycle through that for 6 to 8 weeks. And basically, I just kept going through that for a good year. And that worked really well for me. I felt like I was able to aesthetically get my body to where I wanted it to be, and I could work on things that I need to work on in terms of like isolation exercises. And I think that's a really good way of doing it, just because your body naturally moves in that pattern. So like when you're doing any type of push exercise using your chest and triceps, any type of pull exercise using your back and biceps, so it just makes sense to naturally do those areas together on one day. The last part of her question is, if you do a back day, do you separate it into lats doing and then like traps, or you know, do you separate the muscle groups within that like larger group and break it down like that? And my answer to that question is, again, it depends on what you're doing. It depends on what you need work on. So if you are training for some type of aesthetic, then yes, I think you should break down a little bit of what you're doing. Basically, what I would have all of my clients do, and what I still have my clients do today, is if I'm gonna do a back day with them, I'm gonna start with the most compound exercises in the beginning. So the hardest lifts basically that I can give them in the beginning, and then I'm going to go into the isolation exercises kind of as I see fit. So I'll take a leg day as a great example of that. I would always start out with some kind of heavy lift like a squat or a deadlift, and I usually go back and forth between the two of them. And then I would go into another compound movement like a lunge or a Bulgarian split squat, or split squats with the Smith machine or something. And then I'd probably do one more compound exercise, maybe 2 to 3 is probably good. And then I would go into their isolation exercises. So to kind of finish this out, just to make this, not to make this video too long, is that I personally think that unless you are training for a show, I think that compound movements are the best way to basically get the best results. I don't really think that isolation exercises are necessary unless you are training for a certain body type, a very specific thing. Then I don't think isolation exercises are necessary. I hope you guys found that helpful and useful. And if you guys have a question for me, again, you can ask me on any of my social media, and I will link those down below as always. And yeah, that's all I got for you guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in my next one.